You could buy the English Project, the newspaper novel, for the artworks. Yes, that makes very good sense. After all, some of these artists are soon to become famous. Remember, you heard it here first. Or buy the English Project for the writing. That's a no-brainer, too. Or you could buy the English Project because it is truly unique and definitely collectible. But most of all, you should buy the English Project, the newspaper novel, to make yourself equal to those who consider themselves to be authorities over you, those who work so hard to pull the wool over your eyes. Buy the English Project to make yourself equal to their tricks and ploys, and even if you never read it through, keep it about the house, close to you. Let it remind you that power is corrupt, that authority is always compromised, that only the truth will do, and you can demand it as your right, even here, perhaps especially here in England. Hello everybody, or maybe there's only one of you, or maybe there's only one of all of us. Isn't that what we believe, spiritually? And this film is indeed a call to the spirit. This little film introduces the English Project, which is a unique novel in a newspaper, and a complete book of resizable PDFs of all its pages, available online for just £1. The English Project, the novel in a newspaper, tells us about power, and how power is misused by those who have it. The English Project awakens us from a sleepy acquiescence, awakens us from false trust in authority, in government, in those who have laboured oh so hard throughout their lives, have laboured with such unrelenting determination, laboured for years to put themselves in charge of our lives. The English Project demands that we take back what is ours. And what, after all, is ours? Ours is the human spirit, the evolving spirit of mankind. Ours is our own little stake in that great oceanic force, what we call the self, my little self, your little self. These are ours. Our bodies, too, are ours. And in a lesser, weaker sense, of course, those we love and who love us, those we cherish, those who are the treasures of our hearts, who give us joy and meaning and purpose and strength in life. These are ours. And so, among so very many untold everyday wrongs, we see, in this particular instance, in the English Project, we see a child, and the secret courts of the family justice system, and a putrid judge, and a writer, fighting for what is his, fighting against the machine, if you like. Ah, the ageless chap with the fine head of hair is on the phone. And that is so, Prime Minister, yes, he is saying. We want you to promote her, yes, we want her to be the new Minister for Children, yes, indeed, with immediate effect. The civil servants are cringing, they don't know where to put themselves, as the Prime Minister's voice on speaker carries among them. Dear, oh dear, it's the same old, same old. I'm here again, yet I would be elsewhere, and otherwise. But she's very tainted. The PM's messianic schoolboy voice has a quite beseeching tone. People simply can't believe that she cares in the least about children. In fact, it's rather the opposite. And that's why we want her, says the chap with the hair. But, yes? Surely that is not advisable. She has a history, indeed she has a record. She's on record, I mean, in the public domain, as being very unsympathetic to children who seek redress. So we'd be sending a signal, which is to say, surely it's not a signal we would, well, Should we chance it, do you think? Oh, yes, indeed. We'll chance it, Prime Minister. It's precisely the signal we wish to send to your ministers and their officials and their underlings, and to the public at large. But I have to say, the Prime Minister very sulkily replied, it is probably going to cost us the election. Not our problem, old chap, came the reply, and anyway, no one is going to notice, are they? Look, the Prime Minister splutters down the phone. Consider, don't I have a say in this? I have my own people to look after, you know. Either way, I thought you said we were equal partners. Haven't we been through this before? Really, Prime Minister, none of us is free. Do you imagine we are free to hang about and do what we like? I'm afraid not. And you must do as we say, must you not? But not to worry about the election. You've had a very good innings, and there are better things still before you. I needn't remind you, surely, Prime Minister, that you have still so very much to gain, and so very, very much to lose. There was a longish pause. Somebody drummed his nails on the table. The civil servants, anxious not to hear any more, pretended to confer in whispers. The sunlight acquired a greenish tinge. A smell arose. Very well, the Prime Minister said. He sounded so sad, so burdened, so out of sorts with the world. I will do as you say. Before you go, Prime Minister, there's perhaps one little thing more. Yes? We were wondering if we might not have another power. Ultra vires will do. We don't want a lot of idle talk in Parliament. Ultra vires? Yes? All this mudslinging that goes on today, all this demotic mudslinging. We want you to make sure that anybody who calls any of our people now, what is that word they love to use? The newspapers. I take it you mean the P word? The P word? Ah, yes, I do mean that. In short, then, anybody who uses that term without prima facie judicial evidence must be held to be in contempt of court and should be sent directly to prison. We simply must have more order in the population. I can only agree to look into it. The Prime Minister's pleading tone had now acquired a distinctly sobbing underlay. I cannot promise to do this immediately. It is fraught with legal difficulties, I have to say, and politically, well, I can't begin to say. Did you write these words? She asked, holding him in her gaze. Hugo was unable to explain to me later why he didn't challenge her at once. You've been poking around in my dustbin? Have you been in my flat? The sheet of printed paper she held up for him to read was stained with foodstuffs, but was perfectly recognizable as his. The words he saw on the page he knew by heart. We were like gangsters at the races, she read aloud for him, tonelessly. We doped the horses, bribed the jockeys, threatened the officials, all in the name of class advantage. The NHS, the trains and the utilities, the city and the public services, wherever the money was, they would find us, helping ourselves and those of our servants who had kissed the hand. We trained new lawyers in the habits of those already first at the trough, snout deep in it. We strapped them into harness in the lodges. She looked up coldly and asked again, Did you write these words, Mr. Thayer? And then she read aloud some more, and he felt as though he was frying on his seat. And woe betide those who would not learn their lesson from us. Such reprobates, rebels, freethinkers were out, relegated. The glorious judiciary was only this. A club in its social aspect. In its commercial aspect, a cartel, a fix, an absolute monopoly in every conceivable sense. Its culture, elitist, establishment, contemptuous of ordinary folk, dismissive of their paltry claim to rights, morally a caste of gangsters, predators in ritualistic dress, a veritable pantomime of the spiritually defunct. Who could fail to think, she said, evidently seeking to provoke him, that any man who said such things was quite plainly mad, And to write them, to take such pains. He said nothing. He veiled his gaze. He retreated into himself and found himself thinking of his son. "You asked me to help you," she said, quietly, intently. "So I must ask you to be truthful with me now. Did you, or did you not, write these words?" "I wrote them down," he said. "But what is that noise?" he asked, hoping to move on. More than ready to collude with him in moving on, she responded, "Don't you think it strange?" And she held up her own newspaper and tapped a headline with her finger, "that the establishment is so afraid of people who don't like child abusers. Even unpopular governments in this country prefer to make themselves even more unpopular by showing a firmer resolve in protecting those who prey on children than in protecting their potential victims. I don't suppose you can explain that to me. You see, I'm not from this culture. I'm perhaps not English enough to understand." "Maybe you could tell me," I ventured. "Yes? When exactly did I die last? I sense I was an 18th century sort of chap. Would you happen to know by any chance?" "It is no matter," he said. And yet I think he lied. They all of them lied always, all spoke the truth, only to confound or deceive. The basic rule applied to all of us is, kill all hope, always. I didn't know that, of course. Not at that stage. I was barely inducted. I was a tyro, a neophyte fiend. I was naive. "Could you then tell me at least, perhaps, what I was in my last life? You were a man, if that is what you're worrying about." No. I mean my station in life, my social status, my professional activities, my associations and the like. Was I, for example, anyone important? Was I at least a professional person? Surely you can tell me that." Your Honour, you were a judge." "A judge? A judge of what?" "A judge at law." Of course, not a judge at crafts. A circuit judge, in the family courts." "Oh yes, you were fine indeed." I don't mind saying I was gratified, most gratified, to hear this. No riffraff then. "And where would that have been, pray?" I asked. "Oh, you were among friends. You were in a place where our people are exceedingly effective." "Effective?" "Yes, and positively swarming in the workplace." "Swarming?" "Case study workers like yourself. They abound in Blair's New England." "England? What a relief!" "But who, I wondered momentarily, is Blair?" "You know, I rather fancied I was English," I confided, feeling a moment of pleasure at last. "You lived in England, and you worked in the English courts, Your Honour." "Well, yes, indeed." I like to strike the congenial note. "And that is why you are here." "Oh." Notwithstanding, I told myself that he is probably mistaken, and there will be time, I hoped, to sort out these anomalies. But where, pray, in England?" I asked, merely to keep things moving, as it were. "You did not die in Grubden." "In Grubden, Surrey? You died intestate. You died a year ago last week." "Oh." I put on a brave face, all right, and I was quite dry-eyed, so to speak, hearing about my poor dead little self. "Do let me know. I suppose I died a venerable death? In my bed, surrounded by family members?" "You died in Sussex." "Ah, the Downs. On a farm. I'm a tad surprised. I have no truck with farms, in fact. In a concrete pig pen. You died. I'm sorry, Your Honour. Your Honour. What? Tortured to death? In England? What century was that?" "But really," he said firmly, dismissing my inquiries as though they were the babblings of a waking child, "none of this matters in the least. Now read, if you please. It is required." could buy The English Project, the newspaper novel, for the artworks. Yes, that makes very good sense. After all, some of these artists are soon to become famous. Remember, you heard it here first. Or buy The English Project for the writing. That's a no-brainer, too. Or you could buy The English Project because it is truly unique and definitely collectible. But most of all, you should buy The English Project, the newspaper novel, to make yourself equal to those who consider themselves to be authorities over you, those who work so hard to pull the wool over your eyes. Buy The English Project to make yourself equal to their tricks and ploys, and even if you never read it through, keep it about the house, close to you. Let it remind you that power is corrupt, that authority is always compromised, that only the truth will do, and you can demand it as your right, even here, perhaps especially here in England.